Hi everyone, I'm Dr. Z. I'm a clinical psychologist specializing in transgender care. Welcome to my channel. I've noticed lately in my comment section on my videos that quite a few of you have been expressing different forms and types of fears. And I thought it would be a really good idea to do a video today to discuss the most common 3 types of fears that I tend to observe in gender diverse community, and to share with you what each one of those fears may be telling you about yourself, and especially about gender transition, and potentially what to watch out for and how to deal with those fears. For starters, let me talk a little bit briefly about fears and how, in my view, fear tends to break down predominantly into 2 different categories. Fear in of itself is a physical, emotional, physiological response that we usually have as a reaction to situation, to events happening to us right now, or to perceived future events that are going to happen in the future. Fear can also be response when we're thinking about the event that happened to us in the past. So fear tends to fall into really 2 types of categories in my view. One is fear is there as a sign, as a warning, as a kind of a sign signal to let you know that you are in danger, to let you know that you are in danger situation. It's usually the type of fears that we feel in our gut. It's a gut reaction type of fear. An example would be you walking down the street and suddenly you see a mountain lion running towards you. Doubt any of us will encounter that in the city, but just to give you a banal example, you're going to experience the type of visceral fear which is telling you run, seek safety, protect yourself. So that's the one type of fear, the type of fears that tells us that we are potentially entering a dangerous situation, or we're about to encounter a dangerous situation. And then there's the second type of fear. The second type of fear I like to call our homebody, because that type of fear, in my view, is actually our best friend. That's the fear we're experiencing when we are about to make some kind of change in our life. And it's a fear arising out of discomfort that we tend to feel, the tension that we feel about how that change is going to unfold. It's a fear that's related to unknown, because we often don't know how the things we're going to move toward going to unfold for us. As a result, we tend to have this type of fear, and it's a fear that basically tells us, whoa, wait a second, I'm a little bit scared that I won't be able to handle whatever may unfold in front of me. It's usually fear related to not being able to handle things that may come in the future. And the second type of fear, why I say it's our homebody, is because it's actually arising out of something that we desire, something that we want, something that we wish to do. And so in a way, we are wanting the change to come. We don't have that gut scared reaction that we would have if we encountered a dangerous situation. There's no danger present here per se. It's more about, again, fears that you won't be able to handle how things are going to unfold for you. And that's the type of fear we need to embrace, because that's basically communicating that there is just a tension between where you at, the status quo, that your situation is now so content and so comfortable, and the place where you want to be, where you want to go, and the tension between them is that fear feeling. It's actually nudging you, moving you forward over here. So it's a type of fear that, in my view, needs to be embraced. For example, when you have a feeling and you know that you should be changing, perhaps the job you're doing right now and moving to a new job, so there's going to be that fear because it's unknown. You don't know how the new job is going to unfold, but you still desire to move in the direction. So you notice how either the desire or wanting usually goes along with that fear. So those are the 2 types of common fears that we tend to encounter. Now, when it comes to gender transition, the 3 most common fears that I tend to see people tend to experience, in my view, none of them necessarily fall into danger category. A lot of them have to fall in the category of, I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to handle it. The number 1 fear that I see, this is the biggest fear for majority of you, is that I am afraid of the not that's the word that I have in my mind is not the right word, so I'm not even going to say it. But I'm afraid how my gender transition is going to unfold and how it's going to affect people around me. Number one fear is the fear, not necessarily of transition itself, or that you're going to transition, or fears that you are going to regret it, or fears that you're making a mistake. It's primarily fear how those around you are going to respond to it. It's a fear how your loved ones, your family, your friends, your kids are going to respond to it. It's a fear you might lose those people around you. It's a fear how you're going to be perceived and maybe acknowledged by society. It's a fear about whether you're going to be able to find a job as trans-identified person. It's usually fears related to external environment, external circumstances. I want you to pay really particular attention to this fear because it's a very important fear. But the reason why it's so important is because it has less to do with your uncertainty about your gender identity. Notice how here you're not fearing of transitioning per se, you're fearing of unknown. You're fearing of whether you'll be able to handle, whether you have resources, whether you have capacity, whether you have perseverance, whether you have strengths to be able to handle everything that's going to come along with transition. This is the fears that I tend to see more as a homebody. This is the fears that tells you that, yes, you want to move in this direction. You need, a lot of times, it's a life-saving thing to do for a lot of you transition. You need to move in this direction and you're scared of it because you feel you don't have resources. But as you often know, historically, when we fear things and we still move in that direction, we find resources within ourselves to conquer this. We find perseverance. We realize that we're actually stronger than we ever anticipated ourselves to be. And often things just end up falling into the place. So that is the first fears that a lot of you fearing. And again, the reason why I want you to pay particular attention to it is because in this particular fear, you're not questioning your gender identity. You know you are transgender. You know the transition is the only way or the way for you to alleviate gender dysphoria, wherever transition may be for you. And as a result, you're only fearing how it's going to affect those around you. So basically, you're fearing the ripple waves that it's going to create. And you also fearing how others are going to respond to it. So be careful there because you might end up taking a lot of responsibility of how others might feel when it's really, onto them. It's not your job to gauge and to be responsible for everybody's feeling. You have to take care of yourself and gender transition and making a choice or deciding. I know a lot of you feel that it's not a choice. When I say choice, I don't mean that it's a choice the way public sees a choice, that you just woke up one day and you said, oh, I'm going to transition. No, it's not a voluntary, it's almost like a choice you have to make. So be mindful of that fear because again, you have to care for yourself. You have to care for your health and you have to do what's necessary for your well-being. And a lot of times that has to come at expense of, or not even at expense, but it has to come regardless of how others are going to feel around you. So that's fear number one. The most common fear number two that I see, I tend to see in much younger individuals. Remember, I only work with adults, so tends to be people who are around 18 and I would say 27. And this is the fear of, I'm going to regret transition. I'm going to regret that I'm really, I made a mistake, that transition not for me. I'm going to regret that I ever made this decision. What if I'm going to realize that I'm really not transgender? This is a very also important fear for a different reason than the fear number one. This fear is also not really sending you danger signal as if you're encountering a lion on the street per se, but this fear is also sending you some form of a mild signal. And the signal is, wait a second, if you're wondering whether you're going to regret that you transition, or if you're thinking that it may turn out that you're not transgender, it's a warning signal just to take your time. It's like a yellow light signal that we see on the street that says to slow down. So basically this fear is telling you to slow down. Perhaps there's something else you need to work through, something else you need to investigate. Take your time to explore it. Perhaps seek a gender therapist in your geographical area, seek support groups, seek some other type of information. and try to see what's really underneath that fear. Where is this fear coming from? Because most people, majority of the people that I see that identify as especially trans-binary and struggling with gender dysphoria, are not fearing they're going to regret it. The regret is not associated to I'm afraid I'm going to realize I'm not transgender. The regret may be there, but it's associated to I regretted it because perhaps I'm afraid I would have lost everybody around me. That again, it's external versus internal. This fear is much more internal. It has more to do with now you fearing that you will make mistake in relationship to yourself. So it's very important fear, important to pay attention to it. It's basically telling you to slow down. In no ways is this telling you you should not transition if transition is really for you, but it is telling you something, right? There has to be an element of readiness. You're never going to be 100% ready. Some people seldom 100% ready, but moving in the medical transition, starting hormones, for example, with this holding up tight knot inside of you that is pulling on you, and you're constantly wondering, am I making a mistake? Am I making a mistake? In my view, is not worth it. In my view, you owe to yourself a little bit more time to investigate and to see what's really underneath the fears. And it could be that underneath the fears is something simple as you're just afraid to perhaps embrace yourself, or it could be something else, or it could be that it's lesser an issue of gender identity in relationship to your gender and more of an issue of just gender expression and modifying that. So that's the second type of fear. And the combination between the first and the second is really important in a sense that it's really important for you to break it down which one of the two you're feeling. Because again, first one is more external, has lesser to do with your own inner uncertainty. The second one is way more internal, has more to do with your uncertainty and less to do with external circumstances. The third type of fears that I tend to see is fear most common in people who are not really identifying as trans-binary, more identifying as non-binary, somewhere in the middle of a spectrum, and that the fear of the changes you're going to get are not the changes you actually want, or you're going to get changes that are not enough in terms of your presentation of your gender, or you're going to get things you just really wish to avoid. So for example, for non-binary individuals who are interested in maybe testosterone, microdosing testosterone, their fear could be that you want the deepening of the voice, you don't want the facial hair. For non-binary individuals who are interested in feminizing hormones, the fear could be that you want softening of the skin and softening of the face, but you don't want the breast growth. So it's a fear of, again, lesser has to do with your gender identity in this realm and more to do what kind of changes you're going to get. And I did a video talking about this, about how to handle or what to do when you potential changes that you may not want. I'm going to link it below as well. And in that video, what I basically said is that sadly, there's going to be some kind of trade-off. Sadly, there's not going to be a perfect solution because transgender services, in my view, for non-binary individuals are deeply lacking. And I think that the medical field, along with psychological field, is still trying to understand and find a way how to best serve you. As a result, it can be difficult because what may work for somebody who's trans-binary, for example, trans-binary females, will very strongly want all of the changes on feminizing hormones. Trans-binary males will also want all of the changes that testosterone offers, whereas non-binary individuals, right? That's the reason why you identify as non-binary, is because you're not leaning strongly toward one binary or another. You don't want all of the extreme changes. So you want very subtle things. Sometimes subtle things can come in the form of a surgery. There's subtle facial masculization, facial feminization type of surgery. It can be in body modification, getting a more androgynous chest presentation. But there's going to be some trade-off because you yourself will have to gauge and will have to take that risk and find out what will work for you. Sometimes that entails actually moving forward and doing something and then seeing whether it affirms where you're at. And sometimes with one affirming step, you will get things that will affirm your gender, and then you're going to get something else that is not something you wanted, but it's going to be just part of the part of the past, unfortunately, because hormones, especially masculinizing hormones, are very strong, and hormones, especially masculinizing hormones, do present those changes, and they present changes very strongly. So as a result, you want to be careful. You want to find things that's going to work for you. So you're going to want to gauge things slowly. And gauging things slowly for you will mean a lot of times taking the risk. The best things that you can do, if that's your fear about getting changes you may not want, the best thing to do is to really have a good understanding of what changes you may get. Have a really good discussion with a medical doctor, especially when it comes to hormones, in terms of how your body may metabolize hormone, what kind of changes you can expect, how fast, how quickly, at what point can you stop. All of those things are really going to help you make the best informed decision. So those are the three most common types of fears that I tend to observe in gender diverse community. You're probably going to fall into one category out of the three, or you might fall into overlapping category of combination of those fears, and that's okay. Gender transition in of itself is a scary endeavor. It's not a walk in a park. It is challenging. It is, as you know, financially costly. It is emotionally costly. So the fear is going to be present. It cannot exist, in my view, without fear, because you are stepping in a completely unknown territory. You're stepping in completely unknown terrain, and you're not sure what you're going to encounter. And often it is more about you fear of not being able to handle it. So it's really, a lot of it is being able to trust yourself and trust your resilience and your resourcefulness. In my view, a lot of you had been living and struggling with gender dysphoria for a big portion of your life. And in my view, if you had a resilience and resource to be able to cope with it, no matter how maladaptive or how painful those coping skills were, you will have resilience and capacity to also go through gender transition if that's something you wish to do. So comment below, let me know what fear you tend to experience, what kind of things tend to help you in terms of dealing with that fear and bypassing that fear. I love to reading all of your comments, and I'll see you guys all next time. Bye.